Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
This is episode 2.
And hi, Sammy. How's your week going?
Pretty good. How about you?
It's going good. Lots going on, though. It's keeping a lot of balls in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So what is on your mind today?
So today I think we want to talk about the theory of the mask and what that means, and do you wear a mask and what are you hiding when you have that mask on?
Yeah, and for me the concept came about because I didn't think about it, but in my getting in shape and when things went well, somebody had said to me afterwards something to the effect, "Oh, it must have been a real drag that you were so bummed out when you were overweight and out of shape." Right. And I said, well, I wasn't. Like, I was pretty happy. I had a lot of great things going on in my life, and I smiled a lot and I laughed a lot. But it made me think and made me wonder. And that's when I started to connect the thought that happiness isn't really the goal for wellness.
Right.
So one way of wearing a mask, which I think I was doing, was I was letting myself be happy, feeling the happiness, and ignoring this beast that was back there, which was that I was getting in worse and worse shape, and it was affecting all aspects of my life. But there's other ways you can wear masks too. Yeah,
for sure. And it's interesting. So I went to India to write a paper that I was involved in with my school at the University of Waterloo. And we were with our yoga guru, and he did a kind of class, like a seminar, and it was all actually around the theory of the mask. And he started by drawing a smiley face on the board, and we were all like, haha, like, what is this? We don't know what that is. And then he drew another circle around the smiley face. And that's when he started talking about traumas and childhood traumas, your pain, wounds, everything that kind of happens from when you're born, really. So it can be anything from, fear to anger to sadness to, anxiety, depression, anything that happens. And then he drew another circle around that one, and he said, this is called the mask. So these are things that he told us were, people kind of put labels on themselves. So for me, I could be like the nice one, or there's other people that could be the silly one, or the class clown, or the athlete, the dancer. There's all these labels. And I find I go into some high schools sometimes and kind of speak about this, and the students can really connect with it because it's such a big thing in high school where they have this mask and where they have to fit in, and that's who they are. And then he started talking about how the mask is covering up the traumas, the wounds, the pain. So once you take off that mask and think to yourself, why am I acting this way? Why am I, pretending everything's funny and trying to always make people laugh? What is it that I'm hiding? And it might be that, you are anxious about looking stupid or looking silly. So you instead kind of want to always be the jokester. So then from there, once you take off your mask and embrace kind of what the pain is happening behind the mask, or just what are you thinking, what's going on through your head, that's when the smiley face in the center, it starts showing kind of like your true self. And that would be things like, loyalty and love and happiness, or anything that's like when you're born, you're kind of born with these genuine qualities that are just kind of there. So once you break through the mask and you accept what's going on, you can slowly start breaking through your truer self. And then once you become, I'm really sad because I feel like, my brother is doing better in hockey than I am. Right. And then you go in and you go, okay, why am I so sad about that? What's going on? Like, what is the issue here? What is the pain and trauma behind my feelings? And then you're able to start reflecting out who you truly are and your true emotions, which the mask is almost kind of imitating.
Right. So it's, yeah. And my experience, it's not the same, but it's definitely related, which was, and I think one of the things you're saying is a lot of people don't even realize they're wearing a mask.
Yeah.
And if there's a way to reveal it, that's got to be a good thing, because then at least you can think about what to do next. And so for me, I'm glad I was happy. I mean, I like to laugh. I like to smile, and I like to, you know, tell jokes and all that stuff. But I realized that I was in trouble. And if I had let things go, I would have been in worse and worse shape, and it would have affected my health. I felt fine. Like, I didn't ever feel sick.
Right.
I was always out of breath when I walked upstairs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that for me, that happiness was a mask, then I could start seeing past it and trying to figure out, okay, well, what do I need to do here?
Right.
And, you know, that sounds like kind of maybe why you're connecting with other people too, who are realizing maybe for the first time they're wearing it. And maybe other people know they're wearing it, but it's just too hard to look past it.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing too, is that sometimes people within your circle, or just people that you know, they expect that mask out of you. So I remember serving, and I'd always be smiling and happy with the customers. But if I showed any sense of like, you know, I'm not happy, they would have something to comment on it. Like, oh, why aren't you smiling?
Right.
You know, you should smile more. And it's like, you just show a little bit of that emotion of, you know, I'm not happy right now. And people kind of, they don't like seeing that either. They don't like seeing like you not happy or that mask on. So they get so used to it as well that it kind of, it breaks their idea of you, as well as when you're just showing them who you are.
So then do you feel trapped? Like, do you feel like you have to leave it on, or?
Yeah, sometimes, for sure. I think for me, it really just depends on the environment I'm in. I find around my family, it's a little bit different. Like, I can definitely show my true emotions. And if I'm upset at someone, I can tell them that. But if I'm in like a public setting where I'm not so comfortable with someone, I do feel like, yeah, okay, this is how they see me, and this is how I always have to be portrayed.
Yeah.
You know?
And so now I'm thinking, because one of the larger contexts in all these discussions is making informed choices and deciding when to do things, but making it so that you're in control. And it does seem to me, though, that there are times where probably you need to wear a mask. Like, there are times in life where you decide, okay, it's appropriate for me right now to put this mask on.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay, as long as you're doing it because you see it as something positive, as opposed to, you know, I'm not saying be duplicitous. I'm not saying be a fake person.
No, yeah.
I'm just saying at certain points in time, like for me, for example, for me, when I'm at work and I'm in certain, you know, situations at work, I have to have a certain demeanor.
Definitely.
But no, and the other thing you mentioned too, like I worked as a bartender. You worked in restaurants too. What a life experience. I mean, you learn so much about people.
You really do.
In that world.
You really do.
And good things, like good and bad.
Yeah.
But you can have such a great effect on people too. Like if there's somebody who comes in and they're kind of bummed out and you have a good listen to what they're saying, you know, they realize that, and it seems to help over time.
Yeah.
But I think I hadn't really thought of things in the context that you did from what you heard when you were in India. So now I'm a little bit concerned because I spotted a mask, but I haven't really looked for those other ones.
Right.
You know,
like what else?
How many masks can you wear? I don't know.
Definitely.
But I think what I need to do is go back now and start to think, okay, I spotted one and I was able to see through it. And fortunately, I was able to work through it. But I can't help but wonder if there's other areas where I need to be looking.
For sure. Yeah. And I feel like depending on where you are and who you're with, that mask can definitely change. And I think like the first step's always just awareness, being like aware that, okay, I'm putting on this mask. What am I covering up? And maybe it's at work and, you know, yeah, I'm going to be like very professional today. And maybe I don't feel my best, but I'm still going to put like this smile on my face because maybe people at work don't really need to be fully involved in your personal life, right? So you don't need to show them like everything that's going on, but at least you're aware that like you're doing that.
Yeah, and maybe important. You tell your best friend at work or somebody, look, I'm having a rough day, but I'm going to get through it. But I guess why don't we just leave it at this, which is, it's one thing to keep the mask on to get through the day, but don't then forget it's there.
Yeah, yeah, know? Don't ignore it.
Figure out what the heck's going on.
Yeah.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Just before we head back to part 2 of the Beth Beattie interview, quick correction from last week. mental health first aid training, you get that through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. I think I said Canadian Mental Health Association. And the correct link is in the show notes to episode 1. So let's have a little recap of what Beth said last week, and we'll go back into the rest of her interview.
It takes me back to when I was 27 years old and I was a first-year associate at that firm that we were both at. Got depressed, clinically depressed, and I saw a psychiatrist, and I eventually went on antidepressants after being hesitant for a little while because I thought, taking psychiatric medication might be a sign of weakness. Wrong here. The problem was the stigma associated with being bipolar. Certainly, the stereotype was and is that we are inherently unstable and unreliable, and I did not want to be seen in those terms. So I kept my illness quiet for 14 years. And I think when we're trying to help someone who seems to be going through something, it's important to reach out to them and ask them what they need, rather than us assuming what they need. Yeah, so really get from them what they want rather than make assumptions as to what you think they need.
Another thing that I wrote down, you talked about a process of revealing. So let's go back now. So it's a situation where someone's experiencing a mental health issue, and obviously who wouldn't feel a stigma and be resistant, reluctant to reveal it at work? What are the kinds of things? And again, what struck me is you didn't say during your seminar that I heard that people should reveal it at work. What you said was, here are some things people can think about if they're thinking about revealing it at work, and then they can choose whether to go through with that or not. So could you tell us a little bit about what you were thinking about in the process that you thought about?
Yeah, it's definitely not a should to come out of the mental health closet at work. It's such an intensely personal decision that I would never recommend to anyone that they do it at someone else's say-so, including mine. So the conservative approach is to not tell anyone. And that's fair enough because especially if you're going through a depressed period or an anxious period, you may not want to expose yourself to what you worry about in terms of stigma. So you can just keep quiet because once the story is out, you can't retract it. So it's fair enough to keep it quiet. Then you can, if you feel comfortable, reach out to one person. That's what I did at my office. A wonderful woman who's a good friend. I just kind of blurted out to her, Sari, I'm bipolar. And she was very supportive. And it was great to be able to go to her when I was feeling vulnerable. And then ultimately, after 14 years, I decided to tell some of my closest friends at the office. And they were wonderfully supportive. So then ultimately I went to my legal director and told her, and she was great about it all. So I just received so much support. And then I decided to disclose at one of our monthly staff meetings. That's our branch, is about 50 people, lawyers and staff. And it was agony. Like the weeks leading up to it were incredibly difficult. I had an upset stomach. I had a hard time sleeping. I had these pangs of anxiety shooting through my chest. But it ended up going really, really well. My colleagues gave me a standing ovation. And it was just lovely. And there's been no looking back. I've been a mental health advocate since that time.
And are you working only on dog files?
No, my practice didn't change at all.
That's
great.
I
love it. I'm still given really challenging work, so it's great. And I'll say this, John, I've now given well over 100 presentations. I've sort of lost count. And I've had some articles published, including the Globe and Mail. So literally my story's gone out like to tens of thousands of people, and with the Globe, hundreds of thousands of people. And I have not once received a negative comment to my face or an email. Not once.
No, and I mean, you're on the vanguard here. I mean, not even for that reason. I'd like to think that anybody who can step forward, and then essentially you're asking for understanding, you're asking for to let people know that be yourself in front of them. I'd like to think that everyone will react that way. But another thing, I think the reason why people stand up and applaud is because, we're at a time where finally in the last few years, we're seeing some real breakthroughs where, whether it's Bell, Let's Talk, or other things. And by the way, they're not a sponsor. We just happen to mention it. But whatever it happens to be, we can talk more openly about this. And so a lot of people, I think, have to thank you for what you're doing, and maybe other people will be able to do the same thing.
Well, I think that certainly for some people, when they disclose at work, there is a risk that there's going to be a jerk who's going to say something negative. And what I would say to the person who's disclosing is, yeah, there's a jerk, but there are many, many more supportive people around you. So the supportive people far outweigh the jerks. So I would just sort of rely on support from the majority of people and try not to worry about the jerk too much.
And you're able to then continue working, being productive, being effective. Do you feel like there's a load taken off at all? Do you feel any different?
Oh, I feel terrific. Like, I just have found the disclosing process to be incredibly cathartic and empowering. After hiding, I consider it as being 14 years of living as a condensed ball of angst, worrying about people finding out about my illness. So it was, once I disclosed publicly, it was kind of like this explosion where all sorts of good things have happened. And the most important of which is that it's helping to open the conversation and also supporting other people to get the help that they need. So I've loved it. I just so enjoy it. I so enjoy it, and I've really benefited from it personally.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to ask you about too, which is, so there's a long story as to where we all end up where we are, including how I'm talking to this microphone right now. And one of the things that got me motivated was, it started off, I started off helping people in certain areas and then others, and then I was part of a service club and doing volunteer work and helping people in the community, and I got a lot out of that. The other thing too is, it's good it's just a great feeling inside to help people. And also, it's a bit humbling too, because I see somebody who needs help and I help them without judgment. And then that means if I need help, I feel more comfortable saying, well, people who might help me won't be judging me because I don't judge others. So in your experience, you've now, like you said, you've talked to thousands of people. You've done so many seminars. What are you getting out of it on that front? Is that helping your state of mind? Is it, how does it work?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's part of my anxiety disorder and perhaps part of my personality that I need to have, or at least I desire to have, positive reinforcement. And usually after I make a presentation, I get positive feedback. So it kind of feeds that almost neurotic side of myself. And I'm a big-hearted person. When I hear that people are getting the help that they need, or have started to disclose and are getting a lot of support, yeah, that just warms my heart. So I just think that making presentations can be profoundly helpful to at least one person in the audience. If it's just one person, that's good enough. Usually it's more, depending on the size of the audience, but it can just be so beneficial. And I know I do hear from people. I know that there are a lot more that I don't hear from who benefit from my disclosing. Yeah.
Okay. And then of course, we're getting closer to the end, and I've got a question I ask every guest. I'll let you know about that. But I cannot move past talking to somebody who likes to exercise, without talking about exercise and wellness. And, you know, so my experience was that for whatever reason, I didn't do it for this reason. I didn't go into exercise for wellness. But at a certain point after I got into running and I was out meditating and running, you know, doing all that stuff, a whole bunch of ideas relating to wellness started to make sense to me. And so now I see, my own personal view is that it would be great if everyone could find some time to do some kind of physical activity, even and I'm not talking about high intensity stuff, even a walk in the forest, a walk on a path, going out and getting some fresh air. To me, that's, I think, fundamental. And I'd like to talk to other people who've gone through these experiences. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, somebody who's going through your experiences, how do you feel like exercise helps?
Yeah, I would say after taking medication, the next most important part of my staying well is exercise. For me, cardiovascular exercise really works. I get that runner's high. I was a big runner for many years. I've had to retire due to injuries, but I definitely get that high, and I can still get it with a spin bike, doing spin classes, or I have my own spin bike right over there. And that makes a dramatic difference in lifting my mood. If I'm feeling anxious, then I hop on the bike, and after whatever it is, say 45 minutes, I come off with this clarity of mind, and whatever problem I've been grappling with, I usually am able to surmount it after the cardio exercise.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I think, can relate to that in the sense of sleeping on it, and it's a neat feeling. Yeah. And I think you can do it both ways. I think you can sleep on it. I think you can exercise on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm with you that not everyone enjoys exercise. So a brisk walk can really help. Like it calms my mind, a good brisk walk. And certainly yoga is meditative as well as being physical. So I think that's great. I don't do it as much as I should, but
no, I'm the same. I was really shocked when I went to yoga class. So didn't want to go for a long time. I'm not flexible, and I thought I was going to be judged. None of those things happened, but I had no idea about the mindfulness side to yoga, where you can focus on a breath and bring yourself to the moment. And in doing that, lose a lot of the spinning of the mind on the issues of the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, look, let me explain this a little bit, because this is the first show nobody knows about the same question I ask every guest. So let me explain the concept a bit, which is we are exploring that there's different facets of wellness. I have 8 that I've identified that are important to me. Things like mental, spiritual, environmental, intellectual, and others. They're on the website if anyone wants to look. And the way that you can enhance wellness in each of those areas has to do with activities. So, for example, if you're off on the physical side, go for a walk, make sure you get your sleep. These are all different activities that you can do to foster wellness. So I'm going to try and ask guests when I get a chance the same couple questions. So you're the first victim. Are you ready? So right now, are you currently neglecting a facet of wellness, a category of wellness? And if so, can you think of one activity that you could do to foster wellness in that area?
Yeah, the area where I'm lacking is to stop the spinning that goes on in my mind. Like for the most part, I'm good, I'm productive and all of that. But in terms of peace of mind, I don't have as much as I would like. Part of it is I have elderly parents who are just a train wreck, both of them. So what I would really like to fit more into my life is reading. I've always been a big reader. In the last few years, especially during COVID, I just have not been reading fiction as much as I would like. And I think reading is meditative. Like you have to focus your thoughts so that you can read the story. And I picked up a novel today, and I hope to start reading it tonight.
Well, that's great. You know, I think I'm in the same camp as you. I just remember when I was young, especially as a kid in grade school and early high school, I loved reading. I love fiction. It just takes you away to a different place in a different way than even TV. And geez, I don't remember the last novel I read. I mean, I read these kind of cheesy novels on vacations where, you read something on the flight that's just something cheesy, but it's time.
John Grisham.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, but I can't remember the name of it, but it's Jack Reacher. That's what I read.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But you're right. You know what? I'm going to put that on my list of something to think about too. So thanks very much. This was our first interview. It was amazing. I really appreciate it.
Okay, John, thanks very much for having me on.
Okay.
I'm Cameron, and this is The Starving Artist. Practice makes perfect. You've heard this a million times before, I'm sure. Dancing, music, sports, cooking, even learning how to parallel park. Practice makes perfect. It's great advice. If you apply yourself at something, you'll eventually get it perfectly. And who wouldn't want to do whatever it is they're trying to do perfectly, right? In music, there's an obvious link to this. You sit down with your instrument, and you practice until the piece is perfect. I want to share an interesting twist on this classic line. Instead of practice makes perfect, practice makes habit. That stuck with me the first time I heard it, because you can have good habits and bad habits. And so that means that depending on how you're practicing, you may not be building the habit that you want. It's easy to see the link to music here. If you're not practicing mindfully, it's never going to come out the way you want. But I started thinking of this in a wider context across my life, not just as a musician, but just as a person. I started looking at my own habits and tendencies and ways that I could practice building either better versions of those or different things. I could practice choosing patience instead of snapping. I could practice taking my sweet time over coffee in the morning instead of rushing because I feel like I need to get something done. It's interesting because the more you look at it, the more you see that there's room to practice everywhere. It's pretty cool. And the beautiful thing about practice is it's a process. It's the act of trying to get better at something. So take that with you this week. Practice makes habit. Is there a habit you're trying to build, or change, or replace, or break? How can you practice to get it to where it needs to be? I'll leave you with this quote from Kurt Vonnegut. To practice any art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow. So do it. I'm Cameron. This has been The Starving Artist. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing, please spread the word about us in social media and by good old-fashioned word of mouth. Subscribe to our show and rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Drop by our website, letsbewelltogether.com. Find us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together. We also have Twitter and Facebook pages. Post on Instagram and connect with us using the hashtag letsbewelltogetherpodcast, all one word.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
We always smile a bit when we put that intro on because it just sounds funny to move that body.
Yeah.
But we like it. We're sticking with it. And today on Move That Body, we're talking about a difference between core and strength training. And I think for a lot of people, they would say, what's the difference? And sometimes, that's just in the speaker. And so I just want to explain kind of how I see core versus strength. So, and I think, Sammy, you were saying at F45, you have different types of workouts. And I think that's going to zero in a bit on what I'm thinking.
For sure. Yeah. So we, so every day is kind of different. So we do Monday, Wednesday, Fridays would be like cardio days. Some of them will be like hybrid, but Tuesdays and Thursdays tend to be like our strength days. And, the ways that we differentiate like different types of strength movements could be like from body weight, which is whatever you're doing it, whether it's a push-up or a plank or sit-ups, it all has to do with like your own body, burpees, that all has to do with like body weight and body strength. versus using, dumbbells or medicine balls or, doing deadlifts, anything like that. So that has to do with like using actual equipment versus body weight has to do with like using what is on your body.
Yeah. And I think that dovetails nicely into for me. So for me, and another irony, I mentioned that it's ironic that I'm not really feeling that great these days. I'm feeling a little frumpy, but when I'm feeling really good, I do a set of core exercises 5 days a week, and I do strength training twice a week. And what I mean by that is, for me, when I'm saying core, it's kind of those body weight type exercises. Now,
Right.
I do, I'll just tell you what I do. And so I can do this at my desk at work. I can do this at my desk at home. But sometime around 9:30, I do the first, it's kind of like a 5-minute set. And I don't sweat too much, so it's not a problem. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing. And then an hour later or so, sometime before lunch, I'll do a second set about the same time. And it starts with 12 squats. Well, actually, I'm not going to say the number because when I first get back into it, I can't do the full number.
Right.
So, you can just work your way up to whatever feels good for you. But I do squats and I actually use light weights. So on a strength day, I would use heavier weights.
Right.
But I keep a set of 25-pound dumbbells in my office and some at home.
Oh, okay.
And so I do 25 pounds, which is a lot for some people. So you could use less, but 12 squats, then push-ups. And then I do 1 minute of a straight leg glute bridge. And basically what you do there is you lie on the ground. I put my feet up on a chair and then I straighten out. So I'm holding myself straight. It's kind of like an upside down plank.
Yeah.
And then I do abdominal curls. So not the ones where you're doing a full sit up. You just have your knees up and you're just bringing your head and neck up, an abdominal curl. And you can look all these up online. And then I do single leg squats for each leg.
Right.
Without weights, because that's really hard.
Yeah.
So then about an hour later, I do runner's push-ups. And that's a specific kind of push-up that I found on the Run Experience website. So you'd have to look that up to see what it is, but they're much tougher. You essentially are keeping your elbows tight beside you.
Right.
Almost like more like a yoga type position, and you're bringing yourself down. And then I do some deadlifts, again with the 25-pound weights, and you don't even need to use weights. You can do them without weights. And then a plank. And then I do something called a hollow body hold, which is something you can also look up. And that's really tough, but it really makes it feels really good. And then I do lunges, single leg lunges. So you'll see, I think a lot of those are probably the kind of things that you're doing when you're doing your body weight training days.
Yeah. Very similar. I guess there wouldn't be any of the weights. So yeah, we wouldn't be using like the 25-pound dumbbells and stuff when we talk about like the body weights versus just a regular weights day. And sometimes it'll be like different pods. Maybe like one pod will be all with physical equipment, and then the next pod is all body weight, and then the next one is a hybrid of both. So it's kind of like cool. It can be like a little mix. The good thing about the body weight ones is that, yeah, you can do that wherever. You can do that at the office. You can do that at home. You can do it on the street if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like an easy kind of go-to little workout.
And the reason I mention it often is because I think more than anything, in terms of there's a feeling I get, especially in my stomach area, where there's really good energy, and it just sends really good energy throughout my body.
Yeah.
I only ever get that feeling if I'm doing regular core exercises. So
Interesting.
if I only do strength, I don't get it. If I only watch what I eat, I don't get it.
Right.
I have to do core exercises to get that really good feeling.
Cool. Do you think that has to do with your mind?
I don't think so. I think it's physical.
With
I can't explain why. And I say that a lot, but I know from experience that that's the case. And so when I'm feeling really good physically, when everything's working really well, I have to be at the right weight and doing my core exercises and doing my aerobics.
Right.
The strength, oddly enough, is kind of a bonus.
Right.
I don't need it, but I do feel better, and it definitely improves my running. I have more stamina and a little bit faster.
Awesome. So, yeah. That sounds great.
Yeah. So that is the difference between core and strength.
There you go.
There's a thought. Popped up while running.
I remembered back to my first day of university. I was studying philosophy. And I really wish I could remember which philosophy professor said this. I can't remember, but I think it was Jerry Campbell, who was one of my profs at University of Waterloo. And during the course of the class, he mentioned that poets ask the questions and philosophers try and answer them. And I really didn't think much of it at the time. It was part of the class. But it did stick with me, and I often find myself in situations when I'm hearing a conversation wondering, are we poets? Are we philosophers? Are one of us poets? Is the other a philosopher? Who's asking the questions and who's trying to answer them? And, it's in funny context too. Like, for example, stand-up comedians. I like to see stand-up comedy. For one thing, I love to laugh. And I've got a funny bone, so it's easy to make me laugh. But I also find that stand-up comedians have a lot of really deep insights. And sometimes I can tell they're doing their bit, but they're really asking us questions, and sometimes pretty hard questions. And they're saying, hey guys, you guys figure out the answers, but think about this. Or maybe not, but that's how I take it sometimes. So in this context, in the context of this show, what I was thinking was that we are the poets. We and our guests, the hosts, the guests, we're bringing up information. We're bringing up questions. We're bringing up things to think about. We're talking about bullet points. Do these ones work for you? We're asking all the questions, and it's up to you to be the philosophers to try and figure out the answers, what works best for yourself. And in some cases, you can do that on your own. In some cases, maybe it's a conversation with a friend or a family member. And in other cases, maybe it's going to get some help from someone. But hopefully we ask some interesting questions and you enjoy them. It's me. Am I?
Yeah. Just let me say, flip side of the coin.
So for me, one of the facets of wellness is financial, for sure. I get stressed out if I'm in situations where I'm not sure we're going to be able to make ends meet.
Right. So we're going to talk about finances today and our experiences with finances. And I thought it was quite interesting when I read your book that it was one of the facets, and it actually made a lot of sense because it can cause a lot of stress in a relationship or personally. And you can really get bogged down not knowing what's going on. Like if you just pay your minimum charge on your credit cards, and then you realize your credit card's not actually getting paid off. It's getting going higher because you have to keep paying more interest and more interest. Things like that.
Yeah, and by the way, just as an aside, the 8 facets I mentioned work for me, and I'm going to say, and I have said on other parts of the show, that different people might have different facets, but it definitely is one for me. And I think back, and where I learned that lesson was when we were newly married, and especially right after we had kids, both being students, hardly any money coming in, and people even said, for example, you guys can't afford to have kids.
Yeah, I know, eh? We couldn't afford to have kids. And I don't think we could afford it if it was today's world.
Yeah, but I didn't look at it that way. And when people said that to me, I said, well, I don't know. My experience is you find money for what you need money for.
Oh, for sure.
And if you have kids and they need something, you find money for diapers, for milk, and all that stuff.
For sure. I remember actually trying, making it a game with the kids when our kids were little and you were just finishing law school. We made a game to try and find change in the house. Whoever found the most change is the winner. And then I would actually roll it. I'd roll the pennies or roll the whatever and take it to the bank so that I wouldn't go buy milk with coins. Because it was embarrassing, yeah. So then I go to the bank and change it into bills and then go to the grocery store.
Right. So in that environment, for us, the only thing that we could do that worked, and it did work, is budgeting. And so for us, I hate to say it was that long ago that there wasn't really much in terms of apps and computer programs, but I think there
Did
were...
we even have a cell phone then?
No.
I don't think so.
No, there were no cell phones.
No.
But... there were pens and paper, and there were probably spreadsheets.
Yeah, and we had a computer.
Yeah, so we had a computer, so we did it on a spreadsheet, but it was really rudimentary. It was it was rent, groceries, telephone bill,
and it wasn't
cable.
easy. I remember looking at this going, really? We make this much money. We make good money. We have a good job. We both had good jobs, and it's when you add everything up.
Yeah, but good jobs, working in a restaurant and being a bartender.
Oh, I was thinking more like when you were a lawyer.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we dance teacher.
We updated it regularly. But the point is, it was shocking. So normally what we would do is first we'd sit there and think, okay, let's just write down all the things we spend money on. And it was kind of fun. You're like, oh yeah, I remember this. And then it would stop getting fun when you started putting the numbers beside them. And then you added them all up, and then you added up your income. And, the first question is always, what are we going to cut?
Yeah. Or like we had savings so that we could buy things. Do you remember? And our list was, we had so much stuff to buy on this list. We never thought we'd get it.
No. So then one thing we did is we tried, one of the things on the list was, let's say we wanted someday to have a second TV or, even a second car, maybe. Unbelievable. And so we thought, okay, well, that's going to cost us this gazillion dollars. So if we can save so many $100 a month, then we can start getting that stuff.
Right.
But anyway, we're getting too much into the detail. The point is, it became something that did help. And it was hard to be going through a store and saying, no, we can't get that. It's not part of the budget. But not nearly as hard as it would have been if we were falling apart financially.
Yeah. If we didn't know what we could buy and couldn't buy, it's a little harder.
Yeah. And
because you get in a hole. And
exactly.
then what? Yeah. So I think it changed the way we spent money, the way we looked at buying things. Do we need this? Do we want this, or do we need this? Can we use it? Can we use something else for it? Something like that, Still to this day, I still think like that.
Yeah, I second guess a lot of stuff.
Because I always want to buy jewelry all the time.
Yeah, so I remember, was it 10 years ago or 5 years ago where you said, from now on when I go to jewelry stores, I'm going to treat it like a museum. I'm going to look, but I'm not going to buy.
Yeah, because I love jewelry. Love it. But I don't even wear it that much.
Well, you like your earrings.
Yeah, I love wearing earrings every day. But yeah, my rings I don't wear. You just don't wear. You don't dress up like that every day. So
no, but I get it. It's something that looks really amazing, and you just gravitate to it.
Yeah, I love it.
So, how many museum pieces have you actually got since you decided never to buy any museum pieces?
I think a few.
Well, I think overall, though, I think we do a pretty good job kind of sticking with that approach from when we were younger. Just, do we need that? Is it want? Is it need?
I'm pretty sure you bought me some of those museum pieces, though, since I've said that. So it's not all me, but
no, I'm terrible too. I get something in my head, like I need to get this, and it won't get out of my head, and so I make crazy purchases too. But again, as long as
running shoes, people, he loves running shoes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
For a sport that's supposed to be.
Do you need running shoes? Do you need those really?
I always tell people the great thing about running is all you need to do is just go to the door and run, and then meanwhile there's expensive running shoes, and you burn through them especially.
And the headphones. Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. Well, this is digressing into how not to treat finances. I better push stop.
Okay. Bye.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
So that is a wrap. The end of our show. And here we are, live, telling us what our week is going to be like. So I will start. This week I'm excited because I'm going to be starting teaching dance again. It's been a while since I've been in the studio, and I'm going to teach some ballet every Monday. So I'm starting that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And Sammy was busy at I think Bachelorette this weekend.
Yes.
So we parachuted in Cameron. So Cameron, what are you up to this week? What's going on? You're in Ottawa, so it must be a pretty interesting place.
It's an exciting place to be right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, just for history, because some people might listen to this a long time in the future.
Yeah, if you're listening to this from the future, this is being recorded during that big protest with all the truckers and their supporters. And I happen to live right near where they've congregated, so this week is going to be a week of trying to get my car out so I can get to students' homes for music lessons, and otherwise kind of hunkering down, laying low, and watching the events unfold. What about you, John? What's going on for you this week?
But just before I talk about myself, you're in kind of bunker mentality.
Oh yeah, I'm in full on stay home when possible mode right now. Just laying low.
Okay, well, hopefully it works out. So I've got lots. I'm going to ramble on for a bit. There's so much going on. So on the podcast side, obviously, really exciting times. We're off to a fun start. The first thing was, would the technology work? I loaded our show on last Sunday and I said, please release this at 5 a.m. on Tuesday morning, and then crossed my fingers. And sure enough, boom, it dropped. It showed up on Spotify and Apple and Google and all that. So that was great. We had 36 followers on our Instagram page on launch day.
Woohoo!
Oh yeah.
And I'll always be grateful to those early people who jumped on. We had a handful of people who liked us or followed us on Facebook. And we even had people who told us that they listened to our first episode. And some of them weren't family. They're actually people in the world. So that was awesome as well. So we're getting fun and interesting recordings done and interviews and sessions. And it just feels great on the podcast side. And then on my book side, I've got some really great news from my publisher, which is that they are sending it out in electronic form to distributors this week, which means it's going to start popping up on sites like Amazon and Chapters and Barnes & Noble probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So that's pretty exciting for me on the book front too. So then on the Move That Body side, last week I said I would try and do 5 times my core exercises, and having just snuck in my 5th one about half an hour ago, I was able to do that. And I've got lots to get back to. I really fell off kind of the balanced taking care of myself. I kept my running up, but not other stuff. And I know from experience, I have to start slow. So last week I tried the 5 core. This week I'm going to try that again to do my core exercises 5 times. And what I'm going to add this time is it's that dreaded eating after supper thing. My little secret weapon is herbal tea. So I'm going to try 5 times this week. After supper, I'm going to make my herbal tea around 8 o'clock. I'm not going to eat any snacks after supper. And then hopefully I can add something a little more later. And one last thing is that I've missed a bunch of park runs recently. Park run is something you do at 9 o'clock in the morning in Kitchener at Victoria Park. It's like every Saturday it's minus 25, minus 30, and I just couldn't get myself to go in that weather. So I'm also going to try next week to force myself out the door no matter what the temperature is.
Okay, can that be my job?
No, because you're too good at it. So that's it. So that's a wrap. Thanks so much, Cameron, for parachuting in for us tonight.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Wishing everybody a terrific week.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.